Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be checking out the Eachine DVR that is specifically designed to work with the Eachine EV100 goggles. Now the first thing I was really pleased about with this unit is that it's really tiny. When they first announced this thing, we just had some pictures and it looked fairly big, like you'd have to put it in your pocket or something, but it's not. It's really tiny, so you can just sort of stick it on the goggle there. I think the best place was probably here, otherwise you're going to be covering the fan up. I guess you could put it over here as well, or maybe here, and they've given you two cables, so I guess you can put it wherever you like. So we have a longer cable and a shorter cable. These are like stereo jacks. And one thing that I'm pleased about straight away is the fact that when I reviewed these goggles, I plugged in the AV in and AV out, and the screens went dark when you did that, like there was an issue with the goggles. However, that does not happen with this, so I think this was specifically designed to work with this from the get-go, and maybe one wasn't ready, I don't know. My personal opinion is this thing's very cheap, and I would have loved to have seen this shipped with this, or even built into the goggle, just a little bit more time spent, but there you go, that's not what we've got. But the fact that you are given some sticky pads to put it on the goggle means you can have more of a all-in-one solution. So, like I say, the way that it works is we have these cables here, so one cable is thicker than the other, so only one will go into there and the other one into the side of the DVR there. And we have got some buttons on here, so we've got a rewind, fast forward and play, and then we've got a micro SD card slot. You're not given a micro SD card in the package, so I've added this one. It's a class 10 32GB one, and then over here we can power it via a USB cable, or you can power it via the balance port of the battery, which is what this battery was originally designed to do. And then we've got an input and output switch. So this DVR, it works the same whether you have it on the input or output, but when you are recording, it's designed to be on the input, and then that bypasses the on-screen display, and therefore it sends the RX's video out into the DVR and it records. And then the output is for when you want to play back the videos to the goggles, so you have to switch the goggles to the AV in, which is a long press of this button, and then it goes through 3 beeps, and on the 3rd beep it will switch to AV in, and at that point you will be able to play back your videos, which is really important with the DVR. In fact, just the other day I had a quadcopter's battery fly out, and I was able to go back into my goggles and play it back and see where it landed. Didn't have to go back to the house, which is really helpful. So when you want to record, you put it on the input option, and then you plug all of this in, of course, and plug this into here. Actually, I'll do that and then I'll show you how it works. Okay, so I've got everything plugged in here, including the cables. So we've got the red light that comes on here when you plug everything in, and then to start recording, just a short press of the button and the light will start recording. Now, if you are on the output switch, you can actually see it recording, but if you're on the output, then the RX doesn't feed through, so you'll just get blackness recorded. But if you're wondering how it all works, then yeah, you can go into the output screen and see how it records it. The recording goes red at the bottom and starts counting upwards. Unfortunately, you can't see it recording through the screens, but you've got this little light indicator here. So if you then want to play back the videos or go in and change any of the settings, you move it to the output. But what will happen if you don't turn the internal RX off is that the DVR and the RX will combat with each other, and you'll get some strange things come up on the screen. So as I said before, you need to go to the AV in option. So it's just a long press of this button here for 3 beeps. So that's 1, that's 2, and then that's 3, and it will go into AV in, and then you'll get a menu on the screen there. So from there you can long press the fast forward button, and then that will take you into the videos that you have recorded. You can then use these going backwards and forwards through the number of videos that you've got on there, and then it's the play button to play that particular video, and then once it's playing you've got fast forward and rewind on these. So these icons here are valid, but you have to go through lots of different sub-menus before it becomes a fast forward and reverse button. And then this one also pauses the video whilst it's playing. So within the playback mode that we're in, there's actually another menu in here, and to get into that, it's a long press of the play button, and from here a menu will pop up and you can delete videos, you can alter the volume of the sound, and that's if you've got a headphone plugged in because there's no speakers on this goggle. And then there's another menu, it's another long press of the play button, and this is a copy of the menu that's on the main screen, which we'll look at in a minute. And here you can format the SD card, you can change the language, you can do a system reset, you can change the light frequency from 50 to 60 Hertz depending on where you're situated, and you can also change the format between PAL and NTSC. I've selected PAL here because NTSC crops off the bottom of the menu, and I'm going to be using a PAL camera on my quadcopter as well. If you use an NTSC camera, then it also crops off a lot of the on-screen display. So another long press of the play button takes you out of that menu. We're back in the playback mode, and then to get out of the playback mode to get into the main menu, it's a long press of the fast forward button. Now I can never remember all of these double functions, but I guess they've had to do it to get the unit so small. So if you want to get into the main menu, it's a long press of the play button, and from here we can change the different recording formats. So we've got the option of VGA, so that's 640 by 480, and that's a 4:3 resolution. Then we've got D1, which is 720 by 480, and that's also a 4:3 aspect ratio, but it's a slightly stretched aspect ratio. And then we've got 16 by 9, 1280 by 720p, which is HD, so I'm going to have to check out those different options there. So we can also select whether it records sound, and we can also have the video files split as well, and that was turned on out of the box, so I've switched that off. So a long press again of the play button gives us the same options as the other menus, so format the SD card, change the language, do a system restore, the light frequency, and also PAL and NTSC. So to get out of there, it's a long press of the play button. So as for criticism, my only complaint would be the fact that there's no feel over these buttons. So a lot of the stuff that you are doing, you're trying to look through the goggles and press these buttons here, but you can't feel where any of them are. They're also very close together as well, so if you sort of put your thumb over one of them, you could end up pressing the other one. So what I've been doing is using my nail, but if you use your nail, it does put little marks on the buttons here. It sort of scratches them as you press them in. So yeah, I would recommend using your full thumb or finger, otherwise you're going to damage the top there like I've done. Okay, so here are the results of my findings. So first is the VGA option, and it's strange because you will notice that my on-screen display is cropped off the bottom of the picture. So I'm using a PAL camera here, and VGA is usually the resolution used for PAL sources, but that's not the case with this DVR. So regardless of the PAL or NTSC setting in the menu of the DVR, a PAL camera will always crop off parts of the image. Now, if you're using an NTSC camera, then the image is fine, so I'd say only use the VGA setting with an NTSC camera. As for the recording, the VGA option peaks at 12 megabit, but it has a variable bitrate, so if there's not much motion going on, then it will reduce the bitrate, and the same goes for all of the other recording options as well. Now, I think this VGA setting is a bug because the D1 setting is different. If the camera source is PAL and the menu in the DVR is set to PAL, then there's no cropping and you get a good picture, which is the correct way a DVR should work. And if you set the menu to NTSC and use an NTSC camera, then the image is also fine. This does mean, though, that if you don't choose the correct output on either your FPV camera or the DVR menu, then you will get some cropping, which isn't too much of a problem if you don't use an on-screen display, but I do. So as for the recording in the D1 option, it peaks at 14 megabit per second, which isn't bad at all. And finally, we have the HD settings. So the PAL and NTSC settings work the same as the D1 option, which is good, and again makes me think that the VGA option has a bug. But in the HD mode, it does record everything in a 16:9 aspect ratio. So this personally isn't a problem for me because it's something that I can alter in Adobe Premiere after I'm done flying. But if you're not able to do that, then you might want to keep it in the D1 mode. So personally, for me, I will always be keeping it on the HD setting because it's also got a much higher bitrate than the rest of the other options. So it peaks at 24 megabit, which means that you will get the maximum recording quality, and I'm happy to say that it doesn't seem to drop any frames and the image is really smooth. So I'm not going to comment anymore on the EV100 goggles as I did a separate review on them and I'll link that in the description, but I will say that if you are persevering with the EV100s, then the DVR is really something that you should get. So I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.